while I was searching around for the next game to review, it just dawned on me. This is Pokemon, therefore there's dozens of games to choose from. So then I took a leap of faith and closed my eyes. We ain't never slept out here. While doing so, I recalled one of the biggest side games from Pokemon. Any of you remember the Mystery Dungeon games? You probably played it when you were a kid underneath the blanket, hoping your mom didn't know you were awake. But while there's several Mystery Dungeon games, I decided to put them all into this one video. But before we continue on, welcome back to the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'm glad to have y'all here. Now then, for the topic of this video, how good are the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games? At the time I'm recording this video, there's currently 11 Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games. And while I could do a video on each one individually, I know you don't want to see that. So instead, they will all be collectively put inside the same video. But it doesn't mean that they are all rated the same. So in this video, if one of them is so bad that I have to point it out, then I will. Otherwise, I went ahead and picked people's most favorite 3 of the franchise and decided to make those the video. And the 3 we will be talking about is Super Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Sky, and finally Blue and Red Rescue Team. Again, if you like another one of the Mystery Dungeon games, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just that the 3 mentioned before are probably better games overall. But again, if you're a diehard for Explorers of Time, you let me know in the comments down below. Now then, let's go ahead and start going over the background. As I just mentioned, there's a lot of games in the Mystery Dungeon series. Therefore, we're not going over every single one of their stories. But to give you a general premise of what is going on, basically, you're a human that wakes up as a Pokemon. Every child's dream, right? After waking up in your new Pokebody and having some other Pokemon pull you in, you end up joining a rescue squad. And a rescue squad is exactly what it sounds like. You go on missions to rescue other Pokemon from dungeons. That could be going off to give them equipment or just pulling them out of the dungeon completely. With all this going on, you go through this Poke crisis trying to figure out who you are and how you got here. But at the end of the day, you stay a Pokemon, so it really doesn't matter. But the coolest part about these games is that you do a personality test. The games ask you a series of questions to determine what Pokemon you correlate to. But majority of the time, you're not going to get the one you want to be. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a Psyduck. There's literally a Charmander right there. But at least the game will let you pick what Pokemon you actually want to be, as well as your partner Pokemon. And by partner, I mean literally a partner Pokemon, not one that you're just sending out of a Pokeball to fight. Now that we've established the story really quick, we can talk about the gameplay. And basically, it's a turn-based dungeon crawler. You get spawned into a room in which you try to find a staircase. Every single play you do, such as moving or attacking, counts as your turn. But on top of that, enemy Pokemon are spawned too in your location to, I don't know, kill you? With some of the Pokemon inside the dungeon, it really doesn't make sense why they attack you and not other Pokemon. They could just be mad because you're so swagged up with that bow tie. But of course, your job is to defeat those Pokemon while you go along your way. And as I mentioned before, usually you have to go find a Pokemon and rescue them or defeat another boss. So now that you get the idea of the game, it's probably one of Game Freak's biggest spin-offs. But now comes the most enjoyable part. Let's talk about the pros and the cons. And obviously, we're going to give this game some love, so let's start off with the pros. The first pro I have on this list is that the game is difficult. Now, usually you would say that having a game that's too hard is a bad thing. However, Pokemon is notorious for being way too soft. And I did mention this before in my Pokemon Let's Go video, which you can check out up there, that having something that's a little bit challenging is good. It's just unfortunate that this comes from a side game. However, you shouldn't be complaining because it's there. Majority of Pokemon in this game are very strong because there's no balance between them. While every Pokemon do have their own stats, it does seem as if that the stats are not strong enough to take an attack, or the HP is way too low. Therefore, a level 5 Pidgey can tackle you and there goes half of your health. But then when you think about it, it could be because the HP is low, because nothing's harder than trying to take down a boss. These bosses have oodles of noodles of HP, and because you're not actually able to see their health bar, you end up just throwing out items left and right. Revival seeds, blast seeds, citrus berries. A lot of the times you may want to stock up on items because you can't brute force it. In regular Pokemon games, you can go pick up your level 100 Lucario and fly through the game, but not in this side series, especially because you have to evolve to get more stats. And guess what? You don't evolve until the main story's over. But if those factors sound hard to you, you haven't seen something like this. A monster house? Oh my goodness. The game will spawn close to a dozen Pokemon in the room that you just entered, and sometimes you end up getting trapped, so you have to defeat them all. The biggest problem is they're all here to kill you. And besides that, each one of them has their own turn to attack. The monster house concept is really illegal. It's really surprising that this concept made it past testing, because majority of the time you're gonna die in one of these monster houses. Unless you're stocked up on items and moves to get around it, you're done. The next pro on the list is the character development. Nearly every single one of these games has a bad team that follows you. Usually it's Pokemon that are poison type for some weird reason. Maybe them boys are just toxic, I don't know. Regardless, Regardless, that Gengar that's following you around has a reason that he's such a poopy pants. It does take them a few beatings until they learn they just can't mess with you, but the character development goes past these bullies. The whole guild starts to love you, the big bad rescue team start to envy you, your partner Pokemon almost becomes a lover. But at least the Mystery Dungeon series does something that the main games cannot do. And I'm not too sure about y'all, but whether you hate me or love me, at least you have an expression. Now then, we shouldn't waste much more time because the cons here exist in almost every single Mystery Dungeon game. And let's just start off with the biggest problem: it's repetitive. As I mentioned before, this is a dungeon crawler game, but what you see from hour 1 is the same thing you'll see in hour 30. I mean, it is very rare that you see something new in this game after playing it for quite some time. The biggest thing you can look forward to is probably new Pokemon and new moves. But it's not like the enemies are spawning in a different location or a different format. You walk square by square doing turn-based. The other Pokemon do the exact same thing and want to attack you. The best thing you can do is formulate new team attacks, but that's not gonna make you go crazy, so what's the point? Overall, if you're getting another Mystery Dungeon game, that means that you like the first one you played, because the gameplay is nothing special to write home about. The last and most important con on this list is the health tracker. And I really shouldn't call it health tracker because there is no health tracking. When I said before the game is challenging, I meant it. It doesn't matter if it's a boss battle or a regular Pokemon in the dungeon. You're just not seeing their health. And for a game like Pokemon that's based off of numbers and not cinematics, it's probably not a good idea. We don't get inside Pokemon to have these excruciating red versus gold battles. There's no big animation or cinematics to any of these, so realistically you should keep it similar to what you did before. Smack a nice green health bar right above the Pokemon and let me see when their health goes down. Because a lot of the times you may have an issue over killing a Pokemon because you can't see their health. Now if this was an optional toggle, I would not have brought this up. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen people say they use a whole link attack for a Pokemon that has 1 HP. Also, that didn't make sense, you just played the game. Regardless, it's a small problem that Game Freak could fix. But other than that, there's not too much more to complain about these games. The whole concept and story is pretty simple, and despite that, you're not going to be upset about what you get. Now, before we get into the rating, I must say that some of these Mystery Dungeon games are just worse. If you see your favorite Mystery Dungeon game on the screen here, you're probably biased to it. Compared to the other mystery games, these ones are just not as good. Whether it's less Pokemon, a poor story, some of them have the same cons I just mentioned, but amplified. Again, not saying they're a terrible game, you're just not going to like them as much as the others. Now then, without further ado, let's go ahead and give it a rating. These bad boys are an 8 out of 10. Now listen guys, if it was any of the other Mystery Dungeon games I mentioned before, it's going to be less than an 8. This series will not blow away your expectations nor surprise you. When you get a Mystery Dungeon game, you know what you're going to get because you know what you're looking for. But I definitely would suggest picking one up if it's on sale. But I also suggest you checking out this video over here. If you're a fan reviewing these Pokemon games, I got more coming up, and also check out the ones you missed. And with that, tell me what you think about the Mystery Dungeon games down below. I appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a good one. Take care. Peace.